What's up, everyone? Thralls of Metal back again. I am Shredlord.
Necrotic Nick.
And we are here to bring you yet another excellent album review. This time we're going to dive into the death metal / blackened metal band Patristic with their album Catechesis.
This also comes out on the 20th of June on Willowtip Records. This band formed in 2022 in Italy. This is their debut full length. They have one EP before this. And this is a side project from guitarist Enrico Schettino. I hope I got your name right. He plays in Hideous Divinity and is a former member of Hour of Penance. And this is a new band for me. Like, I had not heard this band before today, and, you know, rarely do I get a chance to kind of, like, share that with other guys. It's generally some band that I've heard before, like, here, you should check this out. But this one was fresh, even though I kind of knew, you know, one of the members, and I had some expectations, but this is blackened death metal. At least that's what it says in the archives. I would say it's a little bit more on the black metal side.
Definitely. And at least this album.
Yeah. And it has a really interesting theme. This is themed around Christianity, but like early Christian writers, the church fathers, as I guess it said in the archives, like old school Council of Nicaea, like where they kind of like canonize stuff in the Bible so we can get that bullshit out there. So I guess in a way this is Christian metal, but it's not Christian metal in the sense like this is like Stryper throwing Bibles at you, telling you to get your ass to church because they want you to be as miserable as they are.
To hell with the devil.
But this is rather, you know, themed around Christianity and the darker aspects of, and this is a very dark, atmospheric style of blackened death metal for sure.
Yeah, and I've never heard of this band, period. However, I do know who Hideous Divinity is, obviously, but any Italian brethren I've got to sit down and give a listen to because my fellow Italians, we all know the best last names end in a vowel. So, mwah, mwah, manja, manja. But I digress. Yeah, I didn't know what to expect from this. They said blackened death metal, but I feel like the end of the album, there was definitely not that much death metal and definitely a lot of atmospheric demonic black metal.
Yeah, like generally with blackened death metal, like one of the first things I think of like when I kind of like sit down and listen to it is like, all right, what's the ratio going to be? Because, you know, it's a fusion. And sometimes you get styles that will favor one side more than the other. I would say this definitely favors like atmospheric black metal because the soundscapes and the production here, it's very lush. It's very dramatic. Lots of swirling, distant guitars and, you know, vocal cadences that sound more like incantations trying to summon up whatever, you know, like Mesopotamian demons or whatever, or ancient Sumerian gods. Well, I mean, in this case, it's, you know, just talking about Christian writers, whatever. But it has an aura, a vibe, a fucking atmosphere of just, you know, just darkness.
And realistically, the first two tracks are almost all atmosphere,
yeah,
for the most part. There's two title tracks, basically. There's two names of tracks. There is Vinculus Saluda, and there's a part 1 and part 2. And then there is the album title, Catechesis. Sorry, I just say it like that because I just learned how to say the word, so Catechesis. But there's 4 parts to that song. So there's part 1, 2, 3, and 4. The whole Vinculus Saluda songs, the first 1 and 2, really feel like just nonstop swirling of atmosphere for a good 10 to 12 minutes. You get a little bit of riff sections here and there very sparingly, but for the most part, it's just a lot of whirling atmosphere, very chaotic, not a lot of rhyme and reason, just slamming from atmosphere to atmosphere.
I kind of got that in the first part for sure. Like, there's a lot of these big dramatic, you know, like transitions where, you know, the vocals will come in and, you know, recite an incantation, and then it is off to like the next batch of like these, again, swirling, dissonant riffs, lots and lots of blast beats. Like, this album moves pretty damn fast for like a good section of it. You get like moments where it's just, you know, atmospheric strumming, heavy tremolos, but lots of like start-stop transitions that feel like different songs kind of being stitched together. Like this first track, it is kind of a whirlwind of transitions, and at points it doesn't feel as though it's like entirely together. But technically I would say like the first 2 tracks are one track because the transition between the 2 of them is pretty seamless. But the second part of it feels more cohesive. You get some like good galloping blasts. It's a little bit more riffy in spots, which this isn't like the riffiest style of blackened death metal at all, I would say. Like there's riffy spots, but overall this is more about atmosphere I would say like theatricality, like really selling the whole like we are evil as shit sort of vibe.
Yeah, and honestly, throughout this whole album, I really could have used a lot more riffs. Personal preference here, but I felt like there was such a heavy amount of atmosphere. I'm going to say the atmosphere to riff ratio is about 85 to 15. And I feel like more riffs, or maybe the riffs that they did bring to the table, if they would hang around a little bit longer, I felt like it would have possibly improved some of the tracks on here. The other thing too is, because I don't get a lot of guitar riffs, when they do come in, I'd really like to hear them, but the production of the drums and some of the keys and things that are in the background are very high. And with them being so high in the mix, even these multi-layered guitar tracks almost get buried at times underneath the weight of the drums and sometimes the keyboards. And I felt like that took away from the songs a little bit, because we don't get the riffs that much. So when they are there, I felt like they really needed to shine through to kind of give the song a little variety.
Yeah, like when it comes down to like Distance, I am like a little bit picky on it. I like Distance as like more of a seasoning, like not the entire thing. Like there are a few bands I think they can get away with like Distance being like almost their entire thing, like Ulcerate, which there are points on this album where it does sound like Ulcerate. Even as far as like some of the drums in terms of the busyness, no one really touches Jamie St. Laurent in terms of like his playing ability. That dude is, I think he has extra arms. But I need a good balance of like riffs to dissonance. Like a lot of this I would say is, you know, still very comparable to bands like Behemoth, Hate to a degree too. I would even say like Sulfur Aeon, but again, like you get riffs and such in between all the distance and atmosphere. And the additional atmosphere that they do add, I think, is really cool. Like the fluttering strings that show up on I think the title track. Actually, the first two parts of the title track, I guess we're going to count it as one track, whatever. I do think they're effective in terms of like, you know, creating a mood and a setting, because a lot of this feels like it follows a narrative, like there's a story, and, you know, with, you know, a dramatic movie, occasionally you get a lot of establishing shots of like, you know, like, oh yes, we're in Rome. Still, panning shot, huge. Look at all of the Rome we're in. And I like that. That's cool. It's a good setting thing. But I like it to kind of get down to like the meat of the song. And again, like some riffs to kind of break it up. A good comparison would be like, you know, Desolate Shrine. Excellent band of dissonance and atmosphere. Like, you know, the whole album is evil throughout, but you get big, stomping, nasty, dark sounding riffs. And you do with this album, but you have to be patient because a lot of the songs are big on building.
Yeah, and when you finally get into the Catechesis, I guess we'll call them a suite, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It slowly transitions over. It's not really until the last two tracks on the album, which is Catechesis 3 and 4, that you really start hearing more evenness in the songwriting, being that, yes, there's atmosphere still, but there's riffs and there's parts that they're hanging on to as well that just kind of have that good groove or that good just headbangingness to it. But you don't really get that until tracks 5 and 6. Also, there's only 6 tracks on this. So one cool thing that I did like about this album was the flow. Most of these songs just kind of flowed into each other.
Yeah.
But once again, even in parts 1 and 2 of Catechesis, it still felt like it was more heavy on the atmosphere, and they were slowly giving us some riffs. Heck, in part 1 and 2, we even get some fiddles.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get some, you know, the devil went down to the Vatican. He was looking for a soul to steal.
That'd be the place.
Yeah. So Charlie Daniels is tap dancing in the Vatican, playing a little bit for the atmosphere, but finally in 3 and 4, we get some really good riffs here that they just kind of hang on to and let breathe for a little bit. And those reasons are why those last 2 tracks are probably my favorite on the album.
Yeah, a lot of the, you know, blast patterns and such, like, granted, the drum work in here is awesome. Dude's putting in a lot of fucking work, like very Pete Sandoval-esque, like fills and such. Lots of, yeah, just quick as shit. But again, with the drum production being like a little bit loud, especially in terms of the snare, you know, some of the stuff feels very cluttered, and there needs to be like some spaces to breathe. Now they do like some like sharp transitions into atmosphere and then build back, but again, there's a lot of building on here, and sometimes the payoff isn't, you know, as good. Like part 2 of Catechesis has a little bit more like labored build to start up. Like it's a little bit slower. You get the strings, the atmosphere, there's acoustic strumming, like sounds like the beginning of like any exorcism related movie. Like, all right, I'm cool. I like this. You know, this is, you know, got a vibe to it. You get into like some more like double time drums. It's a little bit slower. There's even some like fun lurching riffs in there, but then it kind of like course corrects and gets back to the, drone of distance and all the cold, icy riffs and such. And again, like that's like one of those moments where I feel like it was building to something, and then it kind of just went to the distance. Well, which there's a big well of distance here, and they are drawing from it often. But those last two tracks, they really opened up the whole album. A lot slower, a lot more, kind of like, I would almost call it like doom. Like you have this sense of foreboding. And when they slow it down, this album sounds pretty majestic. You don't get the constant, blasting on the snare, which the snare feels more like a death metal snare than a black metal snare. Like,
definitely. If
you had bigger, chunkier riffs over it,
it would work better.
But you get these big, droning, like heavy single chords. They feel like monotonous, but in like a good way. The very beginning of Catechesis Part 3, it sounds absolutely majestic, but dark. Like there's like a whole like kind of setting and a scene in my head. Like you're watching like storm waves crash in a shore, and it's, gray and almost kind of like twilight. It has that sort of vibe where you can kind of like, feel the riffs move with each giant wave crashing on the shore. That created like a whole different atmosphere and a whole different vibe. And as the song built into the fast material, because the last two tracks in terms of like complementing one another, I think that they do it the best on the album. Those two tracks, they feed off of one another. They have similar vibes and similar builds to them. And as it gets faster and more intense, you have time to really kind of like settle into this transition. It kind of transitions like more in a straight line, honestly. Because a lot of this, it can feel a little cattywampus at times. Like
good choice of words.
That was fun. But like the shifts feel very jagged, and this felt very, very smooth. Like almost kind of like post-metal builds. Like you get a little bit of that like Neurosis vibe, except without all like the glitchy static and, woeful cries in the background. Actually, there's probably some woeful cries.
And to touch again on Nick's point on the last two tracks, the builds in those songs were really great because to me, they led to somewhere, and they didn't make me wait a million years. The rest of this album felt like they were just edging me, and they edged the hell out of me. Atmosphere, and I build up, and I'm sitting here just raging, ready to unleash, and they edge me. And,
This is all metaphorical, by the way.
Yeah, no, of course not. I need to use the restroom after this video. But anyway, I just felt like the last two tracks really were going somewhere, or they didn't make me wait an eternity to take it somewhere because, as cool as that atmosphere is, anything can be overdone. And when you're listening to something, there's only so much of that attention span before you just start wandering. And a lot of the build-ups and stuff in the first four tracks really felt like they wandered and took really quite a long time to get where they wanted to go. These tracks, the last two, 3 and 4, they didn't. They felt like they knew where they were going, and they went there when they needed to, and it didn't make us wait.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll say like, the whole scope of this project with its themes and its sound and, how big it is, like it might be, slightly victim of its concept, like it has to stick rigidly to it, and it has to kind of match the concept because, this is some heady subject matter. I'll give it total credit there. And you want to make it as grand and as theatrical as possible, but sometimes you get a little bit lost in the transitions and such, and you kind of lose momentum. And, when you hear a song on here that has like all the momentum building up and really paying off in like huge crescendos and, solid riffs, solid melodies and such, you compare it to some of the other songs in here where like, yeah, you kind of lost your way a little bit. Like, but at the same time, I wouldn't say anything on here was necessarily bad. It's just sometimes it gets a little bit lost in translation, I'd say. So overall, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. Overall, I enjoyed it. Again, I'm kind of like picky when it comes down to dissonance, and when dissonance becomes kind of the main thing versus like, a good mix of riffs and dissonance, it can kind of take me out of it. This band excels at atmosphere. I felt how dark this album was from pretty much the first note. It sounds evil. It sounds, very lush though at the same time. But when they get more into like some of the slower material towards the end, like that's where like the songs really started jumping out. Like throughout the album, I was picking out really solid moments, but sometimes they just didn't feel like they were like stitched together as well. But individual performances, I mean, the drummer is absolutely crushing on here. yeah, the snare tone is a little bit loud. Like, one of the few times where I'd say, yeah, I kind of need a thinner snare tone. But the guitars, I think, do a great job of swirling and churning the dark atmosphere in here. The vocals are excellent. Again, they're very dramatic. And, you know, that kind of leads with the transitions being kind of very theatrical. But yeah, this was a pretty solid listen. If you're a big fan, again, of Behemoth, Desolate Shrine, even Ulcerate to a degree. You know, it kind of has a bit of that vibe, and Sulphur Aeon. Check this album out. Pretty good.
I'm going to go with a 3 out of 5. The things that they did really well, I thought, were create an incredibly evil, brooding atmosphere throughout the entire album. They did a good job of having good riffs. But my takeaway was I needed more riffs, and the production took away from it a little bit from me because I wanted to hear the riffs once again because there weren't as much. And really, the only other thing that kind of takes away from me is personal preference. I'm more of a ADD motherfucker. So when it takes 4 songs to really get the album started and there's only 6, it didn't really hold my attention as well. But I did enjoy listening to it. There's a lot of great elements of atmosphere. The playing was great. There's nothing technically wrong with it at all. Just some personal preferences in the production and just the songwriting style. So it's still a very solid album. Once again, if you're a fan of black metal, Behemoth, that kind of stuff, I would definitely check it out. But you're going to be edged, and you're going to be edged hard. And you might need to release yourself. That's all I'm saying. So 3 out of 5.
So if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also have memberships. They're only 99 cents, and Little Perk is doing a members-only live stream, which we will eventually do at some point. We just got to find the time to do it. But memberships are the main way to support the channel, and there is a join button down there. If you'd like to hit it, you could join up and join in one of our really weird streams and listen to us talk about poop or nipples or maybe occasionally music.
Sometimes music, but mostly I just try to talk about my stink wrinkle. And last but certainly not least, thank you, the fans. Thank you, everyone who takes the time out of their day to watch our reviews, to comment on our videos, to join our community. You guys are the absolute reason for the season and the main course for our diet of metal. Being able to make these videos for you, being able to interact with everybody, hearing your opinions, getting recommendations from people. Just the whole vibe of being in that metal community online. It's awesome. So just know that we appreciate each and every one of you hanging out with us and watching us, because without you, this would be nothing. So, and I promise I'll never edge you. I will never, ever edge you. That's my promise to you.
It's on the internet now, so, you got to stick with it. But yeah, you guys absolutely roll. Tons of content coming your way. So one more big thank you, because you guys are awesome, and we will catch you later.